I have found as the years roll by that most everything is fluid, and that really includes the ADHD experience as well as gender and sexuality identity. I think we, as adults and older generations, tend to want to categorize people and feel more comfortable when folks identify a certain way and stick with it. However, that is not the reality of the human experience. And that's true for the experience of having ADHD, and also true for the experience of gender and sexual identity.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Taking Control, the ADHD podcast on Truth Story FM. I'm Pete Wright, and look, right there by that tree,
me.
It's Nikki.
Hello.
Hi, Nikki.
Hi.
How you doing?
Doing great.
Can I just ask you about your car? Did you figure it out? Do you have a new car?
Well, I might be. I spent most of Tuesday in major distraction. And you know what? What's really funny is that I looked up a car.
Uh-huh.
I found a car.
Uh-huh.
I asked if the car was still available. They said, sure. Do you want to do a test drive tonight? Yeah, I would.
Okay.
I haven't looked at any other car.
It seems pretty easy.
Yeah. And I come home and I'm like, this is the car. Oh my God, I love this car. And my husband's like, but you haven't looked at any other cars.
Oh,
I'm
it
like,
would be your husband to do that. Oh, he's so pragmatic.
Yes.
Slow your roll, pragmatist.
Yes. And I said, no, it's okay. Like, I found the car.
Yeah.
Like, and then I reminded him that when we bought our house, I'm like, we looked at maybe 4 or 5 houses before we bought our house.
Yeah.
So this is kind of how
and
we
you've lived
roll.
there for like 15 years. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm doing a little bit of back and forth with the dealership, and so we'll see. But yeah,
power
fingers
play.
crossed. Well, my biggest power play was but it brings me joy. And we only live one life. And so we need to live it,
Okay.
in a joyful manner.
It's a car that sparks joy.
It sparks joy.
It's
so
the condo
I don't know.
car. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good for you.
We'll see.
We're talking about, we've got a fantastic guest on the show, and I'm really excited to have this conversation. And in terms of ADHD stories, I think this is going to be pretty special. So I'm real excited to go ahead and get started. The car thing was super important, though, and I feel like we had to check that off the list.
That's right.
But before we start our conversation, though, you know the drill. Head over to TakeControlADHD.com. Get to know us a little bit better. You can listen to the show right there on the website, or subscribe to the mailing list, and we'll send you an email each time a new episode is released. You can connect with us on Twitter or Facebook at Take Control ADHD. And you know what I've been hearing some other podcasts doing that are long-running podcasts is just reminding people about how to listen to their show. And I think that's really fascinating, because I wonder if somebody is coming to the show for the first time, where do you start? Where do you start listening to the show? I'll tell you, you know what's great about our show? You can start anywhere. You really can. We are not an episodic show. So really, you can pick any show you want, any episode you want. And I highly encourage you to head over to TakeControlADHD.com/podcast and just browse the archives, browse the catalog, and look for topics that are really, that you feel like are interesting to you. That would be the great place to start. You don't have to worry about starting at episode 1, although there are people who do. And
oh my gosh.
Can you even
was
imagine?
Was that 2008, 2010?
Listening to your
when
voice.
Was it?
No, it was 2011. I mean, I think it was.
Was it 11?
I think it was 2011. But then there are a couple of years where we've hidden those archives because those were about organizing, not ADHD.
Yeah,
so
right.
Those are the real diehards who have found episode 1, The Office Closet, on the website.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that hit episode.
I need
The
to go
Office
back and
Closet.
listen to that. So don't we have 100 episodes coming or something, or 10 years? What do we got going on?
100 episodes? Did you just say
Well,
100?
no. God.
Episodes?
I know. We have over 400, don't we?
This is
500,
episode
500.
497 today.
Okay.
So
all right.
that
so
means
it's the 500
in a couple
episode.
of weeks, we're going to hit 500 episodes. That feels like worthy of celebration somehow. I don't know what we're going to do.
We need to do little clips. Like we need to do little clips of our old shows. That would be kind of fun.
Oh my gosh.
Wouldn't that be
a
fun?
clips show?
Yes, of like our whole 500 episodes. I mean,
That's a
not
great
a clip
idea.
from each one. But
You should start doing that, listening to every episode. Between now and 3 weeks from now, Nikki, I'd like you to give me
listeners
clips.
Help me. Have them help us. So if you have a particular show that you really like and remember, maybe that's where we can start. Because I can't listen to all 500 episodes.
I hope Productivity Pals is in there somewhere. I think that was funny. There is some funny things in there. So anyway, that's episode 500.
The ceiling.
Oh, Nikki falling to the ceiling
one.
with a little dangly leg hanging down. That was epic. Oh. Anyway, to support the show, if you're interested in supporting the show, we sure are interested in helping you do that. Head over to patreon.com/the ADHD podcast, patreon.com/the ADHD podcast, and you can throw us a few bucks a month. And when you do that, you become a supporting member of this show and this community. You get access to our Discord community, our Discord channels, to the super secret levels of the Discord community, Discord channels. Fantastic community in there. You get access to workshops that we do monthly, and this is a big month because we've got many workshops coming out because we're a little bit behind. And so there's just all kinds of great stuff. And upcoming is Placeholder, Pete's new podcast about tech stuff. That is on the way. We need to get to a point where it meets our financial line about when we can support the time and investment into delivering that show. So, if you've thought about it, if you've considered supporting, but you haven't done it yet, now would be a great time. Help us get over the hump. It's the pledge drive. It's a pledge drive. We're doing a pledge drive.
Yeah,
so we sure appreciate you.
And I do have
that.
a couple of announcements too on the other side of
let's do it.
The coaching business side.
Okay.
Before we get started, real quickly, we have changed the way that we do study hall. So it's starting November 1st. It's going to be a monthly service. So if you're interested in joining me in study hall any month, you can do that, and you'll get all of the Thursdays that are available for study hall. And then we also have the pay-as-you-go option as well, but the fee will change a little bit. So check that out on how that works. Hopefully it'll be more convenient for people to be able to do it on a monthly basis. And then GPS is coming up too. So the next session for GPS, our guided planning session workshops, will be beginning in the beginning of November as well. So take a look at that. If you're interested, please let me know. And if you have questions, let me know that too.
Outstanding.
Right.
So much good stuff happening. Now let's get to the show. Jude Parker Koski has dedicated his career to serving marginalized communities through work in the nonprofit sector since 1996. He's helped youth experiencing homelessness access education, advocated for LGBTQIA+ youth and families, worked to reform foster care policy, and helped preserve urban open space and community gardens. He's also a transgender professional, and he joins us today to talk about his experience supporting his communities while living with ADHD. Jude Koski, welcome to the ADHD podcast.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Welcome. Well, man, first of all, I just have to say you're like an angel on earth with all of the different things that you do for our communities. Thank you, first of all, for that. We need more people like you. So Jude and I, we met through coaching. And so he had reached out to me a while ago. I guess it's been over a year now.
That's right.
You reached out and you wanted to work with me on my online course, which is around time, getting things done around time and calendar. And so we set up a really special situation, which I don't always do. And we worked together with the module. So each week that we met, we would talk about what he learned in the module and what we were trying to figure out with his schedule and everything, and got to know him very well. And then we've also done some personal coaching as well after that, that didn't necessarily have to do with the time management course. And Jude has a great story, and lots of great successes, lots of great inspiration, I think, that you're going to share with people, and also challenging. There were some times that were very challenging that I know a lot of people are also going to relate to. So I'm so happy that you're here. It's not often that I get to have one of my clients on the show. It's an honor. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. And I'm a huge fan of the podcast, so it's great to be here.
So where do you want to begin?
I think I can share a little bit about growing up and my history, and I guess the process and evolution to what landed me here and now. So yes, my name is Jude Parker Koski, and I am living in San Francisco currently, and I identify as transgender. So I'm 47 years old. I was born in 1974 in Connecticut. I have a brother who's 4 years older. I have ADHD, and my brother also has ADHD. And it is possible, although my mom was never necessarily diagnosed, that my mom had ADHD. So my brother and I were born in Connecticut and relocated with our mom and dad out to Madison, Wisconsin in 1978. I was 4 years old. Already by that point, as explained by my parents, I don't remember all too well all the way back then, but at around the age of 2, I started being, I guess, what is called insistent and persistent. It's kind of a medical barometer of gender identity development, and ordinarily starting that young. So I was born female, and essentially at around the age of 2, I became very adamant that I did not want to present in any way that was at all effeminate already at that young
age, yeah.
a toddler. And apparently that's quite typical. Of course, there is a very wide range for all development. Everyone is their own unique person, but that is not outside of what is typical. And essentially, I very much gravitated towards, basically wearing a lot of like my brother's hand-me-downs. I wanted to very much present myself at that time, even as how boys presented themselves. So by the time I entered kindergarten, I was already very much, I think, perceived by many other people as a little boy. Oftentimes, people would refer to me as a little boy. People who didn't necessarily know me, and around the time when I was entering the school system in about first grade, it became very apparent academically that I was having some pretty significant challenges, specifically with reading. There was a great challenge for me to be able to focus and learn within the classroom setting. And I have very distinct memories of just feeling very frustrated, and as if the way that the curricula was set up and the way that the teachers were trying very hard to teach all of the kids in the classroom, that I was really kind of falling through the cracks, and entire school days would go by where I would feel a lot of shame, even that early on, that I was not necessarily, I think, growing and thriving and learning in ways that I observed my peers to be. I was just very, very distracted and played it very cool. I wasn't necessarily at all acting out in any way. I was more, if anything, like a little bit like a silent observer in a way. And it's interesting too because socially, very well adjusted and outgoing, and made a lot of connections with a lot of people. I think specifically other marginalized people,
Mm.
people who had other differences. I tended to really gravitate towards because probably because I could relate to them in many ways. One of my best friends, who I'm still very tight with, has cerebral palsy and is in a wheelchair. And at that time, in the early '80s, it was around the time in the public schools there in Wisconsin where kids were starting to be more integrated into the classroom.
Yeah.
It seems kind of strange to say now, but I'm actually still in touch with my first grade teacher. We're friends,
That's
Mrs.
amazing.
Brown, and she and I talk quite regularly. And she actually shared with me for the first time just a couple years ago that my friend who has cerebral palsy, that was uncharted territory for her, to have someone with with such different needs in the classroom.
Mhm.
And she shared just that she was so appreciative that I really assisted in many ways. This friend of mine, we socialized a great deal outside of school, and she is in a wheelchair, and uh, oftentimes I would uh, bring her out of her wheelchair, and that was kind of like forbidden in the classroom setting. But we assured her that we did it all the time outside of school. So it was just a very challenging experience starting, just underscoring, starting so young.
And that gets
Yeah,
to a question, Jude. But forgive me interrupting.
please.
I'm sitting here thinking, like, I think about the experience as a kid who is charting internally this like path around identity and
Yeah,
understanding who you were at that time, and also the sort of relationship that I can relate more directly to, which is the ADHD stuff. Like that
yes.
starts to rear its head, and you start feeling kind of, I have to imagine, doubly alone. Like if you were to talk about like how you approach both of these paths as such a young person, having to just sort of face that, and the kind of support you were or were not getting from your parents, your family, your teachers around both of those things. Was that a conversation?
Very much so. I'm very lucky in that, most especially my mom she was a labor activist and feminist, and advocate, and in many ways also a community organizer in her early days of her professional career, and um, was really my strongest advocate. My father went along with her leadership and in advocating for me. Um, and this is across the board, uh, in terms of kind of my neuro difference and learning difference, but then also my gender and sexual identity development. Um, and I think I'm very fortunate in that both of my parents and also my brother, were very much from the perspective of uh, free to be you and me, very much supporting whatever direction I felt compelled I wanted and needed to go. And from such an early age, I was so adamant of who I was, not wavering in that ever, that I had that full support. So these conversations were happening. I was able to have conversations about the different bullying I faced. In first grade, back then in the early 80s, Converse high tops were not popular uh, for cis or biologically gendered females, as you all may remember.
Oh,
Yeah.
And
very much. Yeah.
yeah, and so my dad played basketball. He wore Converse low tops actually for basketball, and I wanted nothing more but red Converse high tops, and I got them in first grade. But I was severely made fun of, and even though that was extremely painful and difficult, I was able to have conversations with my parents about it. I I wore them every day despite that, because it was in a way a signal of my identity, my gender, saying, hi, I'm, and my birth name is April. And so back then that is how I was referred to. It's like, I'm April. I may look like a little boy. And guess what? I was born female. This is who I am. And I'm wearing red high
Mm-hmm.
tops.
Yeah. But
Mhm.
you world of first graders are going to have to
Yeah.
get used to people
Right.
presenting in
Yeah.
different ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I
Well,
think I did get some respect for that in
Oh,
large regard. And then
absolutely.
the bullies kept bullying, but I did have a lot of support and advocacy from my teacher and my parents.
Mhm.
Well, and
And
you
you
say
didn't
you're still in
know.
touch with your first grade. Do you still have
Correct.
the high tops? Are they somewhere? Can you
I
pull out the
actually
red high
do.
tops? Of course you
Uh,
do.
I do. Yeah, my
That's
mom,
awesome.
my mom saved them.
Oh, that's
And
fantastic.
That's cool.
yeah, so sadly
That's really
she
good.
died in 2018. And when my brother and I were
Oh,
going through her trunk, it was like an archaeological dig. Starting at the bottom were literally all of our baby things, like a wooden mobile, and then the next layers. And there were my red high tops. It was
Oh, that's
that
quite a
awesome.
is
delightful
Wow.
moment.
amazing.
That
That's
Yeah,
is.
amazing. Nikki, I'm
So
yeah,
sorry I
I
interrupted you.
know. Oh no, that's okay. I know you weren't diagnosed with ADHD until later. So in elementary school, middle school, and even high school, you didn't know you had the ADHD,
correct.
right? So
Yeah. So still there in first grade, the learning how to read. It was my mom who when it became apparent that I was not going to be learning how to read in the classroom setting, um, my mom teamed up with my first grade teacher. And um, my mom really kind of spearheaded the plan to take it upon herself to teach me outside of school. So she was pointed to an education store in the town that we lived in, and we went there and we got a lot of support, which is phenomenal to think about, even that far back in the early 80s. Uh, but being very close to Madison, the education was really top notch, and the resources there too were really great. So we stockpiled up on books. I got to choose special books to learn how to read around the topic areas that I preferred, and
well,
we
that
hopped
helps
to
with
it.
the ADHD.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
I got to pick out whatever I wanted, and we went back frequently and got more books. And it was a pretty. I remember it being like a pretty big investment. These books were not available at the library, and so my mom and I would spend hours after most school days in first grade practicing. And it was a major struggle. There are a lot of memories of crying together and just navigating that experience together. And it makes me emotional just thinking about it. Um, but it was really hard. And um, my mom, believed in me, and she just really helped me learn how to read. And I remember the aha moments, and it really it was just having that. I think the quiet and focused brackets of time to to practice without the distractions that are in a classroom. And then I think also the patience, because I love my first grade teacher, but she had, however many other students, probably 25 other students. And I just really needed more time. And after a while, I completely caught on. And it's so interesting too, because I would imagine other people can relate to this. Once I took off, I so enjoyed reading. And I even, in that same school year, I joined an actual book club that only kids who really enjoyed reading were a part of. And there were only like 7 of us in this book club. And it was led by another teacher from another grade. And it was just such an interesting experience, the oscillation from not reading very well and having it be super smooth and enjoyable to really enjoying reading and then taking a deep dive so young and getting that support. So that was kind of the foundation and springboard really for my family to understand how I best learned. And then from that point forward, thankfully, my parents really dialed in. They got both my brother and I into private schools where the classroom sizes were very, very small. And also, I was privileged enough to be able to have access to private tutoring. So essentially, from that point forward, all the way through high school, I had access to the academic resources that I really needed to help me along a great deal. It was in high school, so that coasted me along quite well, all the way through middle school. And then once I hit high school and I went to 2 academically rigorous private schools, one in Rhode Island and one in Virginia. And they were all girls. I went to all girls
boarding schools.
Not boarding, but Catholic day schools. And that was also quite the experience. So, of course, parallel to this, I think one of my analysis of my experience is that all the while, I was preoccupied really with sizing myself up to my peers, not only cognitively, neurologically, but also for my gender and sexual identity. And so I think compounded with having ADHD, it really just made it that much more tricky and I think challenging in a way for my teachers and schools to be able to meet me where I was at. And that is where the rubber did not hit the road.
Well, that's right. That's what I'm thinking. Like when you're at these girls' day schools, are you still navigating the red high tops dilemma of how you're presenting in this community, or did you just? I don't know what it's called when you just blend in.
Yeah, those went in the trunk.
Okay.
So yeah, like so much of me, I think, growing and figuring out how to survive really and how to navigate school and social and my own identity development. I think that's really in large part, and this goes back to starting when I was 4 years old, becoming an athlete. My father was a triathlete. My brother was an athlete. So I very, very much leaned on athletics. I was a soccer player for, nearly 30 years and starting very young, competitively playing for the schools and then also club leagues. As I've learned about adrenaline and the relationship to ADHD, I think I was very much seeking to have that outlet and release, I think, for the physical activity, exertion. Yeah. And then also it seems that the adrenaline was probably very helpful in helping me recalibrate and stay focused.
The
For the
dopamine,
day-to-day.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
exercise is so powerful with ADHD, and from what I understand, you were focused so much on soccer and school. Those were the two things that you did, and that exercise. I'm sure you probably worked out more than once a day, and some days.
Yeah.
It makes
I
sense.
I did a lot of long distance running for conditioning, and a lot of running with my dad. And then I was essentially playing a sport year round. I would play other sports, field hockey, cross country, to stay fit and active for soccer. So yeah, in high school, I really struggled, and the school at the time, I don't know now, but the school at the time did not have any education support services for any learning difference.
Really?
And it's a
Yes.
Well, I mean,
private
I
school.
say that's a shock, but it's a shock from Pete now. Of course, at the time, I
I know.
imagine that's
Well, and a private school too. They're not. They don't have the same
requirements.
requirements.
Regulation,
Correct.
Yeah, absolutely. So wow.
Mhm.
Oh wow. Okay.
So it was really my father who made sure that I had the private tutoring in place, to stay on course as best as possible. And then, frankly, it was actually my peer group who really just so openly embraced my difference. We didn't have a name for it.
Yeah.
Nobody I knew at that time had a diagnosis of ADHD. Zero people. And so my friends were really just so kind, and many of them were very high achieving, and they were taking all the advanced courses, honors. And so they actually found school really fun and easy. And my close peer group, most of them, and I studied with them. I was able to receive actual tutoring from my peers, and we did that on a regular basis, in addition to the private tutors.
It's so interesting because you had the support of accommodations without even knowing that that's what you were doing.
You had accommodations, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
and
just
and I also would make connections with the actual teachers and do my best in the ways that I knew how to describe then. Was, that I'm very interested in their topic. I didn't want to offend or disrespect them in any way by making it seem like I was not interested. So I took the time, even if I was not approached by them, to let them know that I wanted to learn everything that they were teaching, and that I just needed a little bit of support with that. So there were plenty of teachers who did take the time to teach me different things, after the actual classes. So that was really helpful.
I'm starting to put a picture together of you, Jude, and I'm starting to see that, and I'm wondering where the chicken or the egg landed. Are you doing the work you do today because of your experience early on with the value of just community resources coming to your aid, or was this you being a community activist in your earliest days? Is that just how you're wired? I don't know how it is, but I'm here for that.
Thank you. It's a very good question. It's probably a both and.
Yeah.
Like I said, I really had my mom and my dad in many ways modeling. I think both my brother and I received great satisfaction, uplifting anyone around us who seemed to be seeking out or needing any type of support.
Clearly.
And I certainly benefited from a great deal of support, surround sound. So I think you are hitting the nail on the head, that I chose to go into the nonprofit sector out the gate, right after graduating from college.
So move us forward to the next sort of pivotal moment for you, like as you're, or that pivotal period for you, as the ADHD, the transition, all of these things sort of start to come to a head.
Yes. So in high school, I came out to my very close peer group uh, at the time as bisexual.
Mhm.
So that was in my senior year of high school. And that was around the time when I did have a suicide attempt towards the end of my high school um, year. And I was hospitalized, and I spent a good number of the days for the remaining part of my senior year hospitalized in intensive therapeutic support. That happened in March, and I graduated several months later. And so that was a really big moment. I survived, and I had a lot of support from my family and my peers to push through. I was really struggling with my neurodifference, my sexual and gender identity. Um, I didn't know anyone else among my peers who identified as LGBT. And so it was quite isolating. And I suppose too, I was getting nervous about, you know, becoming independent and leaving for college. I was very excited for that, but also nervous. And so I I stayed focused. I managed to apply for college and was accepted at Johnson and Wales University in Providence, Rhode Island, where I had lived before we moved to Virginia. So I was really excited to get back up to Rhode Island. And that was really a major turning point. I think um, after my experience at the tail end there of high school, it was really a springboard, and I had an aha of this is, the next exciting chapter of my life. And I became extremely motivated to just give it my all. And I dove into the college experience very enthusiastically. I was playing college soccer, and that was so helpful to be able to maintain focus. And I was studying undergraduate business and was able to make great connections with my professors, and was actually able to focus my work while in college on nonprofit and youth leadership development, which was quite unique compared to the other business school students who wanted to kind of go on the a little bit more
Marketing
typical.
and all that. Yeah.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
And
so I
you were not diagnosed at this point, right? So in your undergraduate, you still don't know about the ADHD.
correct.
Okay.
And really, there's no mention of anyone, again, I know, who has ADHD at this point. This is
Yeah.
in the early 90s. And so I maintained a laser focus on a pretty even split between soccer and academics. And so I actually ended up, I was so focused and enthusiastic about just doing well, because I think I
Mm-hmm.
just wanted to prove to myself that I could do it. And
Yeah.
that I had learned what I needed to shore myself up and do what I needed to do. So I actually ended up taking trimesters also during the summers, and I went to school year round, and I essentially played soccer and long distance running year round. And I ended up graduating from college a year early as a result, because I just was on this accelerated path.
So then it sounds like college was a heck of a difference from high school.
Very yeah, a very stark difference. I think also because I went to a very academically rigorous
Yeah.
high school, it really teed me up for a super positive college experience. I was very lucky in that regard. I was used to really a lot of pressure academically, and even though I was not necessarily taking honors courses at my high school, they were at the caliber that
Right.
really set me up for success in college. I actually found, although I still had to study, I think 10 times as hard, and reading comprehension was a little bit more challenging and difficult, I think, than my peers, even in college. I just stuck with it. And really, when I wasn't, out enjoying Rhode Island and the natural beauty there and playing soccer, I was studying. I was studying and reading and preparing.
So you graduated a year early, and then did you go straight to your master's program, or was there some time off there?
I took a lot of time really off from
Okay.
academics. I dove right into professional work.
Mm-hmm.
So graduated in 96, and then from Rhode Island moved to Ann Arbor, Michigan, where essentially I started my career in the nonprofit sector. I worked at a youth runaway and homeless shelter, and became the education coordinator there, and supported youth who either needed a respite from a home-based setting or who were actually experiencing homelessness. And I would advocate and go to bat for them in most cases, believe it or not, to be able to stay in school. A lot of schools are not set up for students who are experiencing homelessness. And in Michigan at the time, they had this, I think it's the fifth Friday count. So every fifth Friday, all the teachers would count how many students in their classrooms were present, and that is the funding that they would receive. So if any students join their classroom after that count, they wouldn't necessarily receive funding. So it was actually conducive for them to keep kids out who had left the classroom for various reasons. So I was meeting with school administrators, essentially letting them know what the law was, and helping youth regain access to their school of origin, regardless of where they were living at the time. And it would help them coordinate transportation so that they could actually get back in the classroom.
So when was the transition for you? When did that happen?
So, really, in college, I started beginning to identify as transgender.
Mm-hmm.
So in high school, I certainly experimented, I guess is the word I use for it, although I see it as I was just being and living. But I experimented with femininity. I, grew my hair down to my waist, long blonde hair. I went to the proms. I um, presented at times quite effeminately. And then by the time of my freshman year of college, that's actually when I came out. And the way that I named it and identified at the time was bisexual.
Mm-hmm.
So I came out to my family and my entire community. And then shortly thereafter, I started shifting in a way, the way that I describe it as I was transitioning essentially back to my roots,
Right.
because the way that I identified in many ways, even though I didn't have a name for it, and presented myself going all the way back to before first grade,
Mm-hmm.
was more masculine. So there was the bracket of time in high school when I presented as effeminate. And then what I call is going back to my roots. I started uh, changing the look of my hair, started going shorter, shorter, shorter. And when I was in college, I started wearing more masculine clothing. And that is when the shift to coming out as transgender happened. After I graduated from college is when I really started identifying as transgender. And by the time I moved to San Francisco in 99, I had come out as transgender in my workplace in Ann Arbor and was fully embraced. That's when I changed my name from April to my middle name of Jude. And in the workplace, I was very much, welcome to do so. And my supervisor at the time very quickly regenerated new business cards and changed all the contact lists, and even had like this little celebration. April is now Jude. And it was quite a positive experience.
Yeah. That's
so
wonderful.
That was in the late 90s. And then by the time I moved to San Francisco, I more fully started to come out as transgender and started using male pronouns. And that was in 1999.
What is the intersection of it's probably intersection isn't the right word, I'm sure, but where does ADHD meet your transitioning experience? Like what was the impact of ADHD on that? Is that something that's describable?
I think the best way that I can describe my experience and all of this to say, everyone's journey is different and unique, right? And so my journey has had a very, in a way, like a compounding effect for me. So I think in everything I do and the lens that I look through and the way that I operate is multidimensional and intersecting. I'm never experiencing life in a silo. When I'm entering a new space, especially with other people I may not have interacted with, the self-acknowledgement that I have ADHD and this neuro difference is very strong and prominent, and I'm a bit self-conscious of it. And then I think the compounding effect of, so I've been taking testosterone since 2008, and my voice has lowered a little bit. And there are many moments where I think people pick up that my voice may be different than a cis or biological male. And so I'm tuned in to that's a possibility. And so I have this heightened awareness and in a way, just a lot of self-consciousness around it, right? And so that's compounded with the ADHD experience. Because there's a lot going on. I think there's a lot of layers in play, both internally and then, it's no surprise to me that externally as well, the way I'm being perceived and interacted with. So I do notice that.
That's the thing that sort of blows my mind a little bit, because part of, as you present today with male pronouns, I'm looking at you like had I not known, I would not have a question. And so my first false assumption is that at some point, after you've introduced yourself and your new identity, you've made that transition public, that at some point you're sort of finished, right? That you're no longer thinking about here's who I want to be, here's who I am inside, and here's who I want the world to see me as. Right. Now I am who I want the world to see me as, and I'm kind of done. Can I get to the good work of helping the world be a better place? And then the ADHD is the thing that becomes the most sort of resonant thing. Like that's the thing, again, I can relate to, because I walk into a busy room with people who don't know me, and I know I'm going to learn 15 names in 5 minutes and not remember any of them in minute 6, because I just can't think like that. And so the fact that neither of these things are ever finished in any way, shape, or form, it sounds like it's just a new version of the journey. Whatever tomorrow is, it might not be today, but it's still the journey.
That's right. I mean, I have found as the years roll by that most everything is fluid, and that really includes the ADHD experience as well as gender and sexuality identity, to anchor this to being relevant, especially I think to youth and young adults. That is a really important factor and experience of young people, that gender and sexuality really is fluid. And I think for a lot of folks of older generations and a lot of people who are not LGBTQIA plus, that can be sometimes challenging to wrap your mind around. But there, it is no surprise, and I think a lot of people with kids right now and a lot of youth are hearing that there are many young people and adults who are identifying as somebody different even on a daily basis. My partner is a high school classroom teacher, and year over year, she's been at the same school for 20 years and teaches human development. And year over year, there are just more and more students who are identifying as genderqueer, transgender, and many other identities, and they are using pronouns that may not be the same with each day. And so this is a stretch, I think, for a lot of people, and it is a reality. And simply because
that cognitive dissonance is real. It can be both things at the same time. And I think I remember the arguments I get in with my father about this, and just hearing the language that he's comfortable with versus the language that I'm trying to rationalize with my daughter, who's understanding these things in a very different way.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so your daughter, how old is your daughter? What grade?
She's 19 now, and so
okay, yeah. So
she's in college.
She has definitely had the experience of peers who are using different pronouns on the daily and identifying in ways that really are much more rooted in fluidity. So young people are identifying in ways that are coming very natural to them because it is natural. I think we as adults and older generations tend to want to categorize people and feel more comfortable when folks identify a certain way and stick with it. However, that is not the reality of the human experience. And that's true for the experience of having ADHD, and also true for the experience of gender and sexual identity.
Well, and it's just such an important conversation, and it's such an important conversation for, the way I personalize it is just like, what can I do to make, my home and my world, the world around me, feel like a safe place for more of these kinds of conversations. And as such, I told you right before we started, I'm always approaching these conversations as a student. There's so much I don't know, and I feel like you've just opened up a whole world of new things for me not to know about really very well. And I'm eager to learn. This is really great, Jude. Thank you for your willingness to talk about this stuff with us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Nikki, did we miss anything you really wanted to get out here?
No, I just really, again, like Pete said, I appreciate you so much being here, Jude. It's always been such a pleasure to work with you, and it's such an honor to see you go through this journey and to share your story with us. I'm just very honored that you are doing this, and I love the work you're doing. Keep doing your work, right? Because it's so important. And you have an excellent boss. I have to actually shout out to his boss, because I'll tell you, I've only met her a couple of times, but she's wonderful, and she supports Jude in such a great way. And it's such a good what do I want to say? Not influence, but role model of how supervisors and bosses, can get along with their coworker, their colleagues, and support them in so many different ways. And I don't know. I mean, obviously you work with Amy all the time. So what are your thoughts?
Professionally, I've certainly been lucky enough to have a lot of support, and most especially from my supervisors. Even with the organization I was with for 17 years doing foster care policy reform work. And then when I joined N10 in 2019, it's a community I've been a part of since 2011 as a member. And when I joined on staff as the membership director, and now I'm transitioning to membership and community director, I received a tremendous amount of support right out the gate for anything and everything I need. And then also for having ADHD, I was lucky enough to be able to utilize my professional development resources to be able to work with you, Nikki, as a coach, and I couldn't more highly recommend that. So yes, I receive a tremendous amount of support and guidance from my supervisor, Amy Sample Ward, the CEO of N10. And that has been invaluable. And the work that we do is based in racial equity and equity surround sound. So we practice equity through and through, both internally and with the community and the members that we work with.
Okay, two things. One, you've used the term surround sound in a context twice that I haven't fully understood. Can you explain what you mean?
Yeah, I think I mean in all areas that are important to receive support. So whether it be through the supervision, also through the organizational culture, the systems and operations that we have in place that are rooted in equity, and supporting the staff as necessary, so that everyone essentially can be their best selves and carry the work through in ways that we need. And that doesn't come without support from all directions.
Okay. And second, you have acronym dropped your organization, N10. Tell us a little bit more about about the organization itself. What do you do there?
Yeah, so we essentially support organizations, nonprofit organizations, and the individuals in them to better meet their missions through using technology. And this is all under the foundation of racial equity. So anything and everything that we do is very intentionally through the equity lens. Like I said, programmatically, systems-wise, operations, and in practice. So that's always at the forefront of our work and the conversations that we have.
Does it stand for something?
N10, it currently is standalone. And you can look us up, for n10.org.
It's just NTEN.org. N10.org. Okay.
That's right.
I love how you put that. It's currently standalone. Who knows? Maybe one day it will.
Who knows? Yeah.
Well, this has been fantastic. We'll put links in the show notes. And I hope if there are any other sort of resources that you feel like you would want to share with our audience, I hope you'll send them to me so I can put them in the show notes and we can point people in the right direction to learn more, educate themselves, and again, keep creating safe spaces for these kinds of growth conversations.
Thank you, Jude, so much.
Jude, you're fantastic. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, and thank you.
And thank you, everybody, for downloading and listening to this show. We appreciate your time and your attention. Don't forget, if you have something to contribute about this conversation, head over to the Show Talk channel. I've got a new thread in there for the live stream today. You can talk right in there in our Discord server, and you can join us there by becoming a supporting member at the deluxe level. On behalf of Nikki Kinzer and Jude Koski, I'm Pete Wright, and we'll see you right back here next week on Taking Control, the ADHD podcast.